My name is Hori Chiquez, much better. And I'll be the host for this session. We have here today with us Bonnie Slackhouse, and she's going to be doing a presentation. Bonnie has been a professional trainer and consultant for over 20 years, working for the Morn Area Community College as an independent contractor. Her passion is to help people to improve what they do, how they do it, how they feel mentally and physically, and help them reach their full potential. She works as a lean practitioner, a hypnotist, and an author. So with that, please join me in welcoming Bonnie.
I feel like this is church and everybody sits in the back. So if you sit right up here, we'll do an induction, put you under, you'll think this is the best session that you've had all day. So thank you for being here. And I love questions. So if anytime through this you have questions, we'll also have time hopefully for questions at the end. Please ask. That's my favorite part. So you're all here probably because you're thinking about how in the heck did we get started. And I will say in my whole career, I was trying to figure out how the heck do we get started, because I always was hoping to have a mentor, never did have a mentor. Everything I learned was pretty much trial and error. So based on that, we're going to go through, and I'm just going to give you some tricks and tips and things that I've learned throughout the years, and it's also in my book. It's Continuous Improvement in Higher Education. They want it very specific to higher education, so that's what I did. So as you're in business being impacted by any of these things, you're probably looking at this and saying, yep, every single one of them. Anybody here dealing with generational issues? Trying to get workers to come in and actually show up and stay for more than a week or two? Okay. And the reason I say that is every company I've trained with in the past 2 years is saying the same thing. So one of the things about Lean, as you all know, is it's a way to help manage change or make change happen faster. If you are not able to change, you could end up like these companies, one of which I used to work for. And if you think about that, whoever thought that the coined phrase of Kodak moment would not be relevant any longer, because Kodak does not exist. Kodak was not able to keep up or adapt to the digital age, and it happened fairly quickly. So if you think about your industry, are you able to adapt, or do people in your organization have, oh, you know what, it's not broke, don't fix it. We're going to be fine. And then by the time you realize that you are not fine, it takes you a long time to get caught up. And sometimes the length of time is not enough. So Lean is basically our vehicle for helping make change happen. I always like utopia, zootopia, the current rate of change. Change is one of the most feared words in the English language. It's because people are afraid of the unknown. And so there's natural resistance to change. But Lean methodology, trying to make it simple and adaptable for everybody, and get everybody involved, can actually help make that change grow faster or go faster. So that you are the preferred vendor, the preferred, you have good quality, flexibility. It can do a whole lot of things. It's not magic. It's hard, I will tell you that. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But it's nice to see that absolutely every industry. It used to be when I first started doing Lean, it was just for manufacturing. And then we had other service industries that said, hey, we're not manufacturing, but we need some help. Can this apply to us? And then the last ones to come aboard were probably education and government. And I'm probably doing more for those two entities now than I am manufacturing. So the question is, what are you doing to help make change happen in your organization? So where to start? If you are, how many people are an individual? You're kind of in charge, it's your job. How do I get started? Is anybody here like the practitioner type person? Okay, and you're like, what do I do? How do I get started? So if any of this resonates with you, one of the things, if you are brand new to this or have people that are brand new, go out and find out what things are happening and what people are doing. There's books out there on the shelf. I am not a reader, so I would go watch people, learn people, search the internet, visit companies. And it's, again, most of my experience has literally been trial and error. And trust me, I had a lot of error. So going out, there's lots of videos. The internet is a great thing anymore because there's YouTube videos. I have a few out there. Training classes, the community colleges, Iowa State, Cirrus, they have training classes. There's a lot, if you go out to Udemy, anybody familiar with Udemy? It's a cheap way to get online classes to learn about different concepts and things like that. Also networking and conferences and finding a mentor. And I've worked my whole life to try and find a mentor, and I haven't found one yet. Looking for opportunities to practice. You can practice lean at home. How many here do 5S already? Or even know what it is? Okay, do you do it at home? Yeah? You're like, once you learn it, it's like, oh man, I could use this in my kids' room or in the bathroom or in the kitchen. So that's a good way to go practice, and because then you understand what it takes to implement those things. Volunteering for work projects. Do you have work opportunities to implement lean in your organization? Or even just like what they were talking about, doing it for volunteer for an organization, just to get your feet wet. Shadowing other organizations. And I don't know, is anybody from Pelicorp here? No. Sometimes Pelicorp has classes where you can go down and participate. I don't know if they're still doing that. But I've done that with them, and they do a good program. It's their environment, but you get a chance to see what some potential training looks like, and reaching out to some of those other companies to say, hey, can I just come in and kind of shadow your person or learn what they're doing, or even just go have coffee. Is one way to get started as an individual. Find somebody that's doing it and go pick their brain and get them to share stuff. I share stuff all the time about whether it's PowerPoints or training or whatever it might be. If you are an organization, again, seek out books, videos, things like that. I was part of the Des Moines Area Community College, and we didn't do lean up until 2006. And as we were developing curriculum to take into non-manufacturing companies, they said, hey, you know what? We're selling this to people. Maybe we should do it ourselves. Okay, guess what? You're in charge, okay? All right, let's figure out what to go do and how to go do it. So I did that internally as well as externally since 2006, almost 20 years. So finding out what others are doing, figuring out what methods they're using. Is it Six Sigma? Is it Lean? Is it Kaizen? Is it something else? All of them are interrelated, but figure out what method is going to work best for your organization, and do you have the resources to support it? What are your outcomes? If you don't have your leadership committed to this, it's going to be a whole lot more difficult. And when I say committed, more than just verbal, oh yeah, I'm going to support you doing this, go forth, and God bless, don't screw up, okay? I'm talking about having somebody in-house that's willing to, if they're willing to pay for that position, to at least do projects and support the outcomes and help remove barriers. Because I ran into a whole lot of barriers that we got stuck, we had to stop a project because we couldn't make it through the barriers. And that puts a really bad taste in people's mouths. One of the things with an organization is identify your sense of urgency. Why are you doing this? People are not going to change unless there's a need to do that. So when I work with organizations, it's why are you doing this? Is it financial? Is it customer expectations that you're falling short on? Is it limited resources? Right now, a lot of companies are struggling. I was over in Western Iowa and working with, doing a training class, and a bunch of company owners were in there. And the one guy says, you know, I keep trying to find people to run these machines. And I've been trying that since COVID, and we just can't find the bodies. Or they'll come and they'll quit like in 2 days. He's like, it's not that we need lean to be more efficient, it's that we need lean to do more with less people because the people aren't there for us to hire anymore. And I think Cirrus had a graph at one point where they talked about the number of people entering the workforce. It is significantly less than it has been in a long, long time. Like, we won't have enough people to fill the positions that are available because we have so many baby boomers going out of the workforce, and a lot of people starting their own business. And you go to high schools, they do a lot with high schools anymore, and you have students out there that says, I don't want to go into manufacturing, I don't want to go into service, I want to be a YouTube influencer or an internet influencer. What the heck? And they're making way more money than anybody else. So they're looking for jobs that, is not even in this realm of those people here in this room today. So we're training people for jobs that don't even exist yet. Do you have old infrastructure? Government policies and regulations are changing all the time. Are you understaffed? Are your costs increasing? Healthcare is increasing, we know that. So how do you keep offering those benefits and being able to attract workers? So how do you make those changes? Lean can help you do that. I've done so many process improvements. People say, well, what do you do process improvement on? Everything under the sun. I always say, do you have a process? Do you have a problem? Do you have willing participants? Sometimes that last one is the hardest to get. Because if you get people in a room to focus on a problem and agree to changes, you're going to be more successful. But it helps move those changes along faster if you have a tool, a lean tool, a methodology, a structured approach, rather than just doing brainstorming in the room. One of the questions are you just talking about it, or are you really going to take action? You talk about lean, and sometimes people say, no, thanks, I don't have time to do that. And I think about 5S classes. I do a lot of 5S training. And people say, well, we could have done this. I'm like, yeah, you hired me to come in to make you take the time to do it. And that's essentially the truth. I give them some training, but it's creating that time and that focus to solve a problem and be more efficient. Willingness and expectation to commit resources. This is where your organization comes in. Have you thought about what resources are going to be needed? Because you can't do it for free. And the worst thing you could do is say, oh, here's Joe over here, and he has a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and give it to him. He already has a full-time job, but we're going to give it to Joe. Well, guess what? How much time is Joe going to spend on something that he doesn't know anything about? Unless she has a passion for it. I've seen it a lot of times. Joe is going to revert back to the things that he knows and he likes, so the lean stuff is going to be set aside and it'll die really, really fast. So, if at all possible, find somebody, number one, that has a passion to lead this. They like people, they like change, they look at problems as not a bad thing, but more as, ooh, that's kind of like a different puzzle. Let's figure out how to change that. Because I've trained trainers, and I had an organization, huge international organization, that picked trainers. The trainers had, no personality, none. And one guy said, well, they won't understand me because I'm talking at this level. And he wasn't willing to adapt. Therefore, their training was not received well. So making sure that you find the right people. Are they people-oriented? Do they like problems? Are they able to work with a lot of different people in your organization? Do they make it fun? Or do they do like what's the guy on TV that goes, Bueller, he's the old science type guy. Also, is your organization willing to work with cave people? Cave people are citizens against virtually everything. You have them everywhere. So when you do change, you have a certain number that adapt early. And then, the big bell curve, those, show it to me, okay, I'll finally buy in. But you always have those cave people, those that will try to resist you every step of the way. Well, there comes a point in time where that cave person can disrupt everything that you're trying to do. So are you willing to deal with those people? Putting policies in place, suggestions. For the most part, if you make a change and they feel the difference, you can get them to buy in. But there are people that you either got to say, yep, get on the bus or get off the bus, because we're moving forward. And that is hard. I will tell you, and please remember this, lean does not take care of personnel problems. I've been in too many situations where I had a superior say, go do this process. And I say, it's not a process problem, it's a personnel issue. I don't care, go do it anyway. And it failed every time. And I've even had the people say, why are you here? This is not a process problem. I said, well, I'm told to do it. Hopefully I can find some efficiencies for you. So making sure that your HR, your leadership will back you up when you run into those personnel issues. Lean will expose it. It will not deal with it. It will not solve it. Create your support structure. So thinking about what goals do you want for Lean? And I'm going to pick on our college president because when I first started, he's like, I said, what do you want out of Lean? Well, I was new, it was a new position. I said, what is it you want to achieve? He's like, well, I want everybody to support Lean. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does it look like? And he wasn't able to verbalize it. So does that mean that we're practicing? We're doing events? Does it mean we're doing some education? How do you want people to behave differently? Which we never got to, so it made it a little bit more of a struggle. Do you have the budget for it? Do you have the budget to support doing these projects? Because things are going to get messy before they get better. You start doing projects, you're going to be looking at new software, new equipment, and it's not a wish list, but those things, it's going to uncover problems that is going to cost you money to fix, okay? Or do you just want to live with the broken process? Leadership behaviors and roles. Are your leadership bought in? Are you preparing your leaders to lead a little differently? For example, if I'm the only one in the organization that's doing Lean, and you guys are all the supervisors, and you're like, yeah, she's doing her thing again, it's not going to go very far. And particularly if you don't get the leaders on the same page to help support and carry out and make those improvements. Because when I do projects, you always end up with an action register. And sometimes they take months to get everything implemented. But it's not, I can't make anybody do their job differently. We can lay it out, we can implement things, but if Sally down here decides, I like the old way, I'm just going to go back to the old way. I'm not her supervisor. I can't support that. I can't make her change. So preparing your leaders. And a lot of times we have leaders that were like, oh, this person was great at their job. Let's make them a leader. But that's a whole different skill set. And I was a supervisor. I went into my first supervisor job not having any training. And we try to do the best job we can, but wouldn't it be easier if you train the leaders? Hey, you want to meet with your people. You want to make sure that they're following their standards. We're going to do this 5S thing. Part of your job is to make sure that they're doing it at the end of every day. So being very clear about what the expectations are. Also identifying methods to gain buy-in and support. So, are you making changes that people actually feel a difference for? Internal communication is one of the things that I underestimated. You have to market yourself internally. You have to do newsletters, you have to do your case studies, you have to share data, because if I'm off over into this corner doing it with this department, we make all of these great changes, but nobody else knows about it, it's going to die pretty fast as well. So, and marketing seems to follow, it's my nemesis. I have to deal with it every place I go. And I've learned how to do it, but it's not what I love to do. But making sure that you have some kind of communication and celebration for those things that you do. When you make a change, making sure that your organization and everybody that's involved with that process knows what the changes are so that it continues to be supported. Determine your drivers. Okay, I'm a company, I want to do some Lean. I don't know. I think maybe I'll hire a consultant to come in. Okay, how long is that going to last? Plus, it's going to be very expensive. They can get you started, but are you going to have somebody in-house that helps you implement change? Like somebody that's versed in mapping or 5S or has a desire to help people improve processes because they can get the training. Is it going to be an individual? Are you going to have a team of people do it? I don't know. Is it their full-time job? Because if it's their part-time job, it might be a little rougher. Is it a leadership group? I don't know. Does that work very well? Steering committee. We've had groups that have had steering committees that says, okay, you're an individual that goes to do this, and the steering committee is going to help you find the projects, do the communications, prepare the stuff, set your goals, all of that. That's kind of helpful, but it has to be structured appropriately. Maybe it's an existing committee, and be careful of that because sometimes existing committees already have their own agenda and ways of doing things. So maybe they don't want to take on this new thing that they don't know anything about. My biggest thing is the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Make it so that it's easy to monitor. I had a city government at one time that we trained trainers. They were rolling out this new lean initiative across the city. But they made it so difficult. Like if I wanted to do a project and I had action items that need to be followed up on, it had to go through 3 different people, to get it done, but then they didn't include the managers in the decisions. So guess what happens when it got to the managers? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Not my deal. Ain't gonna happen. So make it easy. If you make it easy, more people will do it. The role of your champion, if you are one of those champions, making sure that the champion is usually the one that's leading it. They're setting up the schedule, they're inviting the people, they're running the events, they're doing the follow-up to make sure things get implemented. They're working with the supervisors, the leadership, they're monitoring progress, they're communicating. So that's why I say don't make it part of somebody's job unless you have more than one, because if I'm not used to doing that, and this is a whole lot harder because I'm still learning it, I'm going to gravitate to the stuff I know, and that's going to be less and less and less. Also, ensuring project completion. So when I would do events in our institution, I would always try to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. Okay, the leaders didn't know much about what we were doing, but I would help them. I'm like, okay, I will schedule this for you. Okay, if you would come and do X, Y, Z, I will help do the follow-up, and then you can see how I do it, and then you can run the next ones. But making it so easy that they couldn't help but say, yes, I can support that. Different types of alignment. So you could have a project-based, where I go in and I just help you work on improving a project, one project. So in my world right now, I have some companies say, just come in and do this one project, and then we're good to go. And then, I'll have you come back and just do this project. You can have other resources that are part-time, maybe area staff or regional staff or part of somebody's job, which I don't recommend. And then you can have the full-time. If at all possible, try to make the person a full-time person, maybe pair some safety stuff with it as well. Benefits of creating a lean champion. You can expand lean across the organization. So one of the things that I found out that early on is that I was the one common link amongst all of the projects that were going on. Because we have a project over here, this person's changing a whole process. And then this group over here is changing a process too that's similar. And if I weren't there, they would have undone each other's stuff. So the internal champion acts as a liaison to make sure the projects are aligning, that the same people aren't overutilized or brought in on every project, that you have the resources there, that you're taking the right approach, and even just timing of projects, because we have busy times, we have slow times, so making sure that we're not overloading a department that already has a lot of stuff going on. Also, professional development opportunities, doing some other training, being able to do we used to have file clean-out days. How many of you purge your files at least once a year? 1, 2, 3? Okay, there's a few of them. Okay, do you do it as an organization? Yeah? Kudos. That's awesome. What do your shared drives look like? Some of you are like, we don't want to talk about that. Okay? But setting up something like that to where, as an organization, you just simply have a file clean-out day so that you educate and you prepare. Because otherwise you say, well, make sure you clean out your files sometime this year. You just do it whenever you have time. You'll never have time. Okay, you are the person there setting up the time, scheduling the time, getting all the resources put together, whether it's calling Shred It or pallets or doing some education or sending out the document retention stuff. You're the person there trying to help them make it easier, because if it's not easy, people won't do it. Oops. Determine your methods. So you're an organization, you want to start out with lean. Okay, I'm going to commit resources. We got that. We want to have an internal person. But now what tools are we going to use? Is it Six Sigma? Is it a Kaizen? Is it the same one the company down the road uses, but we're not like them? Do we want to start out with something simple? And this is where some of your lean tools come in. Go out and find what other people are doing and adapt, figure out what you want to do. Don't do it just because Joe's company down the road does it. Make sure it fits with your organization. So figuring out the training modules. And I will tell you that I've taken Six Sigma a bunch of the time. Great tool, not mine. I mean, it's great. It's just not where my market is, my fun is. Because to me, lean takes care of a lot of the low-hanging fruit. Six Sigma comes in, helps refine those processes even more. But if you don't like data, you don't like going and collecting, doing observations and all of that, you're not great at math, you're not going to get the masses to do your Six Sigma. But you can get the masses to do some lean practices, identify waste, start making small improvements, and then you can have practitioners come in and do the Six Sigma. So figuring out what training modules you're going to use, and you don't need to have 20 in your toolbox. I would start out with just 1 or 2 or 3 and get really good at those, and you can add others as needed. And figuring out who's going to deliver it. And again, keep it simple. So here's a lot of the different tools that are out there. I would say if you are starting out very, very new to this, pick something that introduces people to lean. And it could be just a presentation on what are the wastes and what your company is going to do. The next one would be having some kind of mapping tool, whether it's a value stream map or process map. Something to map and evaluate your process. All of us have processes. We have thousands of processes that exist. And you can evaluate a process today. 6 months from now, you can do it again because change is happening so fast. There's some processes that we've evaluated in the college 5 different times just because of the changes in technology and people and regulations and things. The other one would be to have 5S, because 5S is organizing spaces. Not just physical spaces, but also electronic spaces. We think technology is cheap, but when you start filling up servers, emails are full. The average American person spends 2 hours a day looking for stuff lost in clutter. It doesn't matter whether you are working on a computer or you working in physical spaces. I've been in organizations where literally 6 hours a day they're looking for stuff, and sometimes more. So if you start out with those 3, some kind of mapping tool, some kind of do a 5S. And the nice thing about 5S is people feel the impact immediately. We can go do a 5S project. They can start out with a cluttered workspace. By the end of the day or the end of the second day, they have a new space and they feel really good about it. And 75% will go home and they'll start applying it at home. So, and then you can add others as needed. There's lots of tools out there. Some of you might have favorites, something that your organization has used for a long time. But if you're just starting out, use those. Process mapping and value stream mapping. Let's see. Well, we'll continue going through those. So an introductory class. These are just some examples, and some of you might have others. These are just the ones I'm familiar with. But basically, when I do an introductory class, we have some that are simulation, so people get the hands-on. But really, what we're talking about is the waste. We're talking about a few tools that they can use to remove those wastes. And I spend a lot of time reviewing waste and giving examples because I want people to be able to see it. When I say work waste, a lot of people don't know what I mean. If you ever went to a restaurant and you're standing there, I went to a Wendy's restaurant, I was doing training in Cedar Rapids. There's 2 of us in the restaurant at noon on a weekday. And I'm watching as the guy comes in and he's milling around. It's like I'm not even there. And then finally he comes up to the counter, you give him the order, and then he disappears again. And just watching all the movement he's doing without actually adding any value to my order or the person standing next to me. Or you go to an airport and you're just shuffling around and you're like, wow, this person is extremely inefficient. So being able to recognize the waste, this is something you could do for every employee in your organization, and they can start making changes. We give them the waste, and then we have them start identifying where they see it in their organization. And that usually gives us a list of other things to work on, bigger projects. So you can do the airplane factory. We have the torch factory, which is actually putting together flashlights and circuit boards. Or it can just be review the waste, talk about the tools, what your organization's going to do with it. That's an introductory. Basically putting out there the terminology and being able to recognize waste. Mapping tools. These are the mapping tools, process mapping, value stream mapping. Basically, it's different than doing just a flow chart. Flow chart is just saying, hey, this is kind of how the process works. Mapping for improvement actually gets you to look at the problems, evaluate the process. And we map it out physically. Sometimes I get people that say, hey, can we do this online? Can we do it on a video Zoom call? Had to do that during pandemic, doesn't work the same. But basically, you're looking at a step-by-step process, and you're evaluating each one of those. Is it value added? Is it not? And how are we going to eliminate or reduce the non-value added? So the process mapping, we put big pieces of paper on the wall, and we map it out in detail. And people are like, why do we have to go so deep into the detail? I said, because that's where the waste lives. It's down there in the weeds, in the mud, in the muck. And there's something about having it on a wall in front of you and you're just staring at it. And the number of people that I've had that said, you know what, if we didn't do anything other than just map all of this, I still got tremendous benefit out of it. So just seeing what it is, all that they do. And typically when we process map, we're able to eliminate, on average, about 28% of the steps. Just by looking at all of those weird little things like how do you send something to somebody? Is it email? Is it snail mail? Is it something else? Or maybe you don't have a standard system. Anybody here do process mapping? Several of you? Okay. And it's easier to learn. I've been in companies where they do value stream mapping, Six Sigma, process mapping. This is easier to pick up. If you teach people the mechanics of that, I get people that they'll start jotting down, hey, I got a new process, I got to figure this out. We'll start writing it down. Value stream mapping is a little harder. Value stream mapping, there's different icons, there's a lot more math to it. It's still an extremely valuable tool. If I go to a production area in manufacturing, I'm probably going to use a value stream map because if your focus is on time and inventory, lead time, those things, processing time, cycle times, you're probably going to use a value stream map. If you're looking at office processes, I'm probably going to use a process map because I'm looking more at what decisions need to be made, where the errors occur, how information is shared, and I have mixed the two together. So again, finding what fits for you. But I don't normally see people that just pick up and start drawing a value stream map. It's a little more difficult than that. Usually it's a practitioner in an organization that does it on a regular basis. Again, two very valuable tools. Then the 5S. And again, this, we do it in electronic environments as well. So teaching, just again, what you're doing is really scheduling people time to organize their space by taking it one approach at a time. I had a woman one time that had an office. It was a disaster. She knew it was a disaster. She's very embarrassed about it because she saw a lot of people come into her office, a lot of clients. And so she wanted help, but she didn't know how to start. By teaching her the 5S project, we took it and we just focused on one step at a time. And we did that over the course of several weeks because she didn't have like full days. It helped her so much that she eventually retired from the company, but she went home to do it at home as well because she literally did not know how to organize a workspace. So teaching people that skill, think about how much better they get their work done just by having an organized workspace. Anybody here not know what 5S is? One, okay. So really with 5S, you start out, you sort. I don't care where stuff goes. Think about your garage. You take everything out, and I'm going to sort through all that stuff I don't need, don't use. You ever see those TV programs? They're like, hey, we're going to organize your house. What rooms? Oh, I want the bedroom, and I want the living room. take everything out, they put it on the driveway, they said you have 1 hour to pick out the stuff you really want. What they're doing is getting you to really think about the stuff that's important to you, that you really need. Because some people, if you give them enough time, they're going to keep everything. Trust me on that. So once you sort the stuff out, you're going to get rid of the stuff you don't need, don't use. And you got to get rid of it immediately. So that internal person, you got to make sure that, get junk, recycling places there so that it's kind of like cleaning out your closet. If you don't get rid of it right away, it finds a home again. Okay? The next thing you're going to do is in shine and set. They kind of get turned around sometimes, but you're going to set in order. So put the stuff back in your workspace in the most efficient way for you, the best way for your workflow and what you do. And you should be able to find those things you use on a regular basis within 10 to 15 seconds tops. Okay? If not, then you need to reorganize some of your workspace. Stuff you don't use should go farther away, higher up, and lower down. So while your Christmas decorations are usually in the attic or in the basement on a top shelf. Okay? Shine is how do you clean on a regular basis, and how do you sustain that? So a lot of times we have a 10-minute rule where at the end of the shift, we have 10 minutes to clean up and organize. And if you don't do that, what happens? What happens if you never clean your house? Many of you probably take like 10 minutes from here. Take 10 minutes every day. You can put a lot of stuff back, put it where it belongs. Most companies have 10, 15 minutes at the end of the shift to clean things, put stuff away, that kind of thing. And then you standardize. So this is where you put the line signs, labels, color coding, and visuals. Okay, think about going out in the parking lot. You guys all parked in a space that probably had lines on it, right? And if the lines aren't there, what happens? I'm mad at you because you didn't park where you're supposed to, okay? You get less cars in the parking lot, you get more door dings. So think about driving down the road. The DOT does really good with visuals because if you've ever been in a country where they don't have visuals and you're driving, it's pretty scary. You don't know what I merge here, stop here, go left. So creating those visuals, and mostly for people that are coming into your organization, how do we make it easy for them to navigate where I don't have to have Joel over here at my side all the time? Joel, where do I do with this? Where do I find this? How do I do this? And then sustain, what are those activities that you're doing to keep it going? So end of shift routine. You ever go to the restaurant, you see the list on the back of the door? That's an example of sustain. They have to check off all of those things to make sure that they got done, that the bathroom is clean, that people want to use it, and they feel good about it. So 5S, doing it every day. Some things you do on a weekly basis, some things on a monthly basis. Kaizen, some people do Kaizen. That's another tool. And Kaizen, there's a formal process with Kaizen. It's usually a 3 to 5 day event. Basically, you do some lean training. You have a tool that you use, whether it's Value Stream, 5S, or something else. And then you make changes and implement those changes. And for me, my Kaizen's a little different. I do the train. I don't call it Kaizen, but I train it. I find a tool. We go do the tool, and but there is a formal Kaizen process that you can use too. So basically, it follows the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Different curriculum options if you're starting out in your organization saying, okay, we got the funding, we got the person, we got the modules that we want to start out with. Where do I go get curriculum to help train? Well, you can hire a curriculum designer. There's information out on the internet. There's games out there. I love games or activities that people can use. You can hire people in. If you have somebody in-house that actually is good at that, hire an ex-teacher. They know how to write curriculum. I love creating training programs and trying out new things. But the curriculum would probably be one of the harder things to try and figure out, because if you don't know how to create curriculum, it's very time consuming. And it's hard to go out and buy some things to do lean. But there are a lot of free PowerPoints out there to get you started. Preparing for rollout. Okay, so got the funding, the people, we'll know the modules, and now we got to plan how to roll this out. How are we going to do that? Well, first of all, you need to inform your people somehow. So what I always tell people is try to come up with a first-year plan. What's the very first thing you're going to do? First of all, you got to communicate, hey, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. You know, tell people, because when they get surprised, they're like going to go, hey, I don't like this change thing. So tell people what's coming, what's expected, and then do some introductory training. Teach them about the ways, why you're doing this. Again, that sense of urgency, because if there's not a sense of urgency, why should I change? If the world's not going to fall apart, why should I change? So give them that sense of urgency. Hey, if we don't do this, we're going to lay off, sometimes you lay off people, or we're going to lose business, we're going to lose customers, we're going to be in financial straits, you won't get your raise next year, whatever it might be. Let them know, hey, either buy in, because here is the situation if we don't do this. Let them know what's in it for them. Hey, job security, you get to work more efficiently. You don't have to be so frustrated. What do they expect over the next few months? Hey, you're going to go be a part of training. You're going to hear more about this in your morning huddles or your team meetings. You might be expected to participate in an activity or an event. And identify the initial projects. So actually getting together and saying, okay, when we roll this out, we better have some stuff on the books to say, okay, if you want to participate in a project, here's the stuff that's going to be happening. We have this process mapping event. We have this 5S event to get people. So you've got them prepared. You've communicated to that. And then if you kick it off and then they see no activity, it's just another flash in the pan. So schedule something so that you have like a first-year calendar of events or things that you want to start working on. And what do you identify? Maybe problem areas. Go around and ask people, what are you frustrated about? I was, when at college, my new position, I didn't have a way of knowing what the problems were. And I know it sounds like I was going around just chit-chatting, but I would go around to a lot of the departments and just have conversations. And when you start hearing this problem over here, and then you hear it again over here, and you hear it again over there, and I just start talking to them about what bugs you. If you could change anything, what would you change? And it's amazing by just talking to people on a regular basis what you find out and what they're willing to help with. Communicating, and again, this is that whole internal marketing thing. Communicating to make sure that people know that you're doing stuff in your organization. It's not one of these things, hey, we told you about it last fall, and we haven't had anything happen since. Whether it's newsletters, maybe it's in meetings, maybe you have big celebrations, whatever it might be, let people know what's happening and what the improvements are. Here's what it was like before. Here's what it's like after. When we do 5S events, I always make them take pictures, before and after pictures. Those are great to share with people. I've done and I know I'm talking about the college, but I've been in hundreds of companies. But in our college, we've done every nursing lab and storeroom out there. And part of it's because they saw pictures. Oh, this department did it. Oh, that department. Oh, hey, we need that because that's a frustration for us. So it can help sell some of that. And also it's nice to go back and say, here's what happened in this event. And hey, we want to do better than that. Hey, we could potentially improve this process just as much. And then have some kind of annual review to say, hey, are we achieving what we set out to in the beginning? And this is from your organization. Our goal was to improve processes. Are we doing it? Our goal was to save cost. Did we do it? So that you can evaluate your process improvement initiatives. Ongoing challenge, consistent method of identifying projects. Okay, who identifies those? Do you have a group, a steering team, a leadership? Because I had to go do a lot of extra lead work because I didn't know who was having problems. But it would be nice if somebody would say, hey, here's the things we need to work on. We need to fit those in somewhere this year. Maybe you're unclear of global expectations, like as an organization. People don't know what it is they're striving for. Addressing roadblocks, that's a big one. And unfortunately, sometimes you just have to wait for the timing to be right or people to leave if you don't address those problems. And I hate to say that. I got to a point at different times in my career where I was like, I'm just going to work with the people that are willing because I can't change somebody that doesn't want to be changed. And I can't get past this roadblock. And then having your leadership commitment. top critical success factors, having leadership support and direction would be great. Getting your middle managers, your supervisors involved, because if they're doing the same thing they did before you started these lean initiatives, not much is going to change. It'll kind of revert back. If I change the process, people need to work differently, but you don't support that, guess what? You're gonna get stuck between two different processes. Also helping you implement those changes, because the worst thing you could do is improve a process and you get stuck somewhere between the old process and the new process. Now people are more frustrated than they ever were before. The next initiative you try, they're like, nope, I'm out. And having accountability measures, again, for those cave people, or those people that don't follow the standards that you set forth. And again, you might implement some stuff that doesn't work. And being able to say, okay, it didn't work, let's try something else. And keep working on making it better. So that is really fast because I want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. But in a nutshell, do you have the leadership support? Do you have people in-house that are going to deliver it? Do you have tools that you're prepared to deliver or want to deliver? And again, keep it simple. And do you have a game plan? Basically that first year plan on how you're going to roll stuff out and how you're going to select projects. So what questions do you guys have? Yes?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for speaking today. You mentioned that lean reveals personalities, and I was wondering if you could just expand upon that.
Lean exposes personnel issues.
Personnel issues.
When you map a process, so I've had departments more than once come in, they don't even talk to each other, like literally. And as you're going, I always tell people it's about the process, not the people. Because a lot of times we want to put names on that map. We try not to put names on there because I don't want it to be personal to you. However, if it's very clear that this person is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, it gets exposed very, very fast. And everybody in the room knows it. I had a head of a department at one time that was the issue. And everybody knew it was the issue. And this person we had different campus, this was a college example, where she would say, well, that's not true. That's not how it happens there. That's not how it happens. I actually had to pull her out of the room and say, you need to be quiet. You need to let them tell their story because that's their reality. And so that we can address the issues. So again, having that person that's always downplaying it, overlooking it, or just not doing their jobs. Like we put checks and balances in another process that the leader had to do, in this case, it was the leader had to do, and they just didn't do it. And therefore, it caused payroll issues. So I can't do anything about that. We can put all the measures in place, identify all the best practices, but if it comes down to that person's just not doing it, then we have to get HR involved or their leader involved. So it does not take care of personnel. That's a supervisory thing. So I don't know if that answered your question. Who else has questions? Yes, go ahead.
So can you explain a little bit more about like your definition of lean champion? Like I'm lean champion at my company, but it definitely seems more of a project manager role, more than kind of the way that you were explaining it. So I'd kind of like to hear your explanation on lean champion again.
So the lean champion would be helping the organization or the departments figuring out, like being able to work with the departments. What is your problem in this department? How can I help you? Let's get it set up. Are you the facilitator? Okay. So you would facilitate the training. And in a sense, it depends on your organization. Do you have project managers in your organization? Yeah. So you end up being a project manager. Because, again, you got to make it easy for those departments, otherwise they're not going to do it. So even to the extent of I would help them figure out, before I do an event, I do a project scope because I want to know what your goals are. I want to know who needs to be involved. I want to know what days we're doing it. And I try to get that all done in an hour meeting or less.
Do you set that out?
I do that. Again, I want them just to be able to say, yes, I'll have the people there. Let's go. Even to the extent of when I'm scheduling. When I have you in front of me, I'm going to try my darndest to get dates on the calendar Because otherwise, how many emails do you go back and forth? And eventually it gets so hard and you're like, yeah, just screw it, I'm not gonna do it. So, and then I will send out invitations or have them send out. So I'm gonna make it as easy as possible for them. Even doing the follow-up on implementation, so there's always things you have to implement after the training. Helping them run those meetings or you run those meetings so that it's easier for them. Does that make sense? What else? Yes.
My question is, have you ever come across where they ask you, for service, and based on the complexity of the project, you say, I can't do that, or you always find a way?
First of all, do they have clear goals that they want to achieve? I have to tailor my training to what their goals are. If they can't tell me what their goals are, I had a company here not too long ago, they said they wanted setup reduction. And I'm like, so tell me a little bit about that. And they said, well, this happens over here, but it had nothing to do with setup reduction. And then, anyway, it just kept swirling, and they could not tell me, as a result of this training, what do you want to have happen? So I'm like, here, you need to take some time, go back, have a conversation, figure out where your problem is, and then we can drill down and address that problem. I don't very rarely say no unless it's outside of my wheelhouse. I will say no if I feel like it's a very toxic environment. So there's companies that I won't train for in the future just because I can't stand the way they treat people. So, or if they say, hey, we need this to reduce our head count. Won't touch that one because that's not what Lean is about at all. And I have refused that. So not very often. If it's in my wheelhouse, I'll try my best. So, yes?
So during Kaizen events or rapid process improvement events, do you have any recommendations or tips on how to keep the project within the scope that was set out in the charter? I know I've ran into issues where it just keeps being inflated and we're looking at more and more. And I just wondered if you have any recommendations on how you keep everybody steering towards the same vision.
So part of it is I do that scope, but I also put like a timeline. What can we expect to have happen or want to happen in, like if we're mapping an office process, it's a non-manufacturing process, it might be, I might say six months to a year. What do you want to be able to achieve in 6 months to a year, okay? And it's that long because sometimes a lot of times there's software involved and IT is always overloaded. Manufacturing, it might be a shorter timeline if there's no new equipment that you have to worry about. So putting the timeline on there is helpful. And if it's outside of that timeline, then it might be for another project. So I would say the timeline has helped me probably the most. And when I finish a project, there's an action register and it had these dates of when they have to have stuff completed by. And we're going to meet regularly until we get that implemented. So that helps kind of keep it too. But by creating that scope, sometimes you go down bunny trails, like, oh, let's do this, oh, let's do this, oh, nope, that's not in our scope. That's outside of our scope. This is what we're focusing on today. So, and I take the scope and I send it out to everybody that's going to participate because I want them to know why they're coming and what our expectations are. So that was a tough one. You just kind of keep bringing it in. Sometimes you'll get them to say, nope, that's not in our scope. But by creating that scope and those timelines, that helps. I don't know if that helps you or not. Good questions. More? Got any hypnosis questions? I can answer those too. Lean's a fun thing, so I say go forth and have fun with it. And
Well, we'll still have a little bit of time, so I'm going to go ahead and just throw
all
a
right.
question at you.
Okay.
So I know that with Lean, first of all, I appreciate sharing all this wonderful presentation as far as getting started with Lean. But I'm looking at it more from the end of the journey, right? When, as a consultant, for example, if a client contacts you and say, can you do an assessment of how well we're doing as far as lean is concerned? And what is a lean organization? What does a lean organization look like from a consultant standpoint? So when you walk onto that production floor for about 2 hours, just observing what's happening, what are some of the things that would be some good indicators as to whether the company is lean or not?
One would be, is a place clean? Are they practicing like daily 5S or daily cleaning routines? Most of the time I'm looking for waste. Do they have clear procedures, standard processes, SOPs, whatever that people are actually following? Do they communicate regularly, whether you have visual management boards, whether you speak with your people on a regular basis to keep them updated and continually try to make improvements? When you hear leadership talking about, hey, here's the next project we're going to do, we're tracking this, having the boards where you're tracking productivity and quality and all of those things. A lot of us don't get there, but that's something where you are practicing it on a regular basis. When you go around into employees and they're talking the talk, they're saying, using common terminology of that's a waste, this is a waste, and you're looking at how you are empowering them to make decisions. Clear visuals, you have good training program when employees come in where they can hit the ground running, and just somebody to lead it, guide it, opportunities. A big one's empowering the people to make the changes. And you can actually see the physical flow. So you don't have a lot of inventory sitting around. You're addressing defects and they're minimal. People aren't spending tons of time searching. You could just watch people work and see whether they're practicing any lean principles or not. Because if they understand the wastes, but if they're not addressing them, you're going to watch people wandering around, searching for stuff, killing time. You can just see it. So those are some things that I look for. But also support from leadership, that when I talk to whoever my contact is, that they are having those conversations about what they're doing, what their initiatives are, where they've come from, and the rate of change as a result of that.
Well, Bonnie, thank you very much for your fabulous presentation. Let's give her a round of applause one more time.
Thank you. Awesome. Have a fabulous day.